our study. It is, I had to write it down. Because if I don't write things down, I don't remember them. It has nothing to do with me recently having received my AARP card. It's just the way it's always been for me. But downstairs in the Sealer room, 9 o'clock, everybody's welcome. We would love to have you. Bring your coffee. But we spend that time looking into the Word of God in light of the New Covenant, based on the death, the burial, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And for the purpose, we have a purpose in our study, and it is to ferret out in our hearts and our minds beliefs that no longer suffice. Beliefs that we have carried over from a time before we knew that we walked in a new covenant with God. I'm just going to throw this out here because it's my best illustration of a covenant, is getting married. It's a covenant relationship. One person brings to the table all that they are and all that they aren't. The other person brings to the table all that they are and all that they aren't. You get together, and hopefully, together, you have a much bigger picture. Like, I'm really, really, really bad at balancing the checkbook, taking care of money and that sort of thing. I married a guy that really digs it. It's like, we're off 3 cents. Really? 3 cents? No big deal? Not a big deal. My time is worth more than 3 cents. Forget about it. Make an adjustment. He can't do that. There's 3 cents off, and we're going to find it. Does that drive us crazy about one another? Absolutely. But it's a good thing. Because if both of us were like, 3 cents, $30, who cares? $400, no big deal. If we were both like that, what a world of hurt we would be in. So anyway, covenant relationship. Prior to, hey, this is our anniversary month. I forgot all about that. Anyway, 31 years ago this month we got married. 32? 31? It's been a while. 31, 30. Come see, come saw. Exactly. You wouldn't worry over 3 cents, would you? No, not at all. So, you found it. Cool. Okay. So November 29th, 1980. What? Yeah. I get confused a little bit, but it's near. It was Thanksgiving weekend, 1980, and we got married. And on November 28th, I was Deb Loftus. Hi, Mom and Dad. And Miss Deb Loftus. And on November 28th, Mike was Mr. Mike Moken. And on November 29th, being Miss Deb Loftus had, its privileges and its rules, and I operated in the rules of being Jim and Joy Loftus's daughter, most of the time. And then, but then I got married. Stood in front of God and the witnesses, and I declared that I would take his name and I would enter into a brand new covenant. All of the rights and the rules that absolutely applied on November 28th changed at about 2 o'clock on November 29th, 1980, for me. My name changed. All the rules changed. All the rules changed. What was forbidden over here, not forbidden over here. Okay? Had I gone to November 30th or December 2nd or something like that, carrying all of the rules that I lived under for the first 19 years of my life, had I carried them over to here, I would not have entered into the covenant. Make sense? We have a covenant relationship with God that changed 2,000 years ago? Frankly, most of us are spending an awful lot of time living pre-covenant and wondering how come things aren't working so good today. And my hope is to address some of those things today. Okay, that was my pre-introduction. Alrighty. A couple weeks ago, I stood up here and I said something about when I was a child, I really thought that God lived behind the purple curtain. I thought as a child. I reasoned as a child. We're going to talk kind of about that today. Another few ground rules that I'd like to establish is the idea about what beliefs we have in our hearts. How do they get there? And you've heard me talk about this before. The way they get there is information plus emotion. Little side note, that's why praise and worship can be so powerful. It can get all of your senses and your emotions present. And if the words that are being sung are truth and life and light, it's a powerful time. It can be a very powerful time. If you haven't learned how to enter in or you feel kind of silly about it, entering into the experience of worship, get over it. Just get over it and get in it, okay? So I was talking to my son the other day, and I suddenly had a revelation. It's like, oh my goodness. I had this enormous fear of needles when I was a kid. Not always when I was a kid. It started at a certain point in my life. And even, okay. And I was like, why do we do this? Why do we have things that happen that we believe, and we can't even reason ourselves out of it? And so I was talking to my son about it, and I said, I think I have the answer. Emotion plus information plants something in your heart, and then it just, grows for a while. You don't even know it's there until one day, oh my goodness, it is harvest time. So for me, this little illustration about needles. I know exactly when it happened. I was eavesdropping, okay? Which is, probably what about a, 6, 7-year-old kid does. They eavesdrop, and they're trying to figure out life listening to the adults talk. And my mom's friend was over, Joanne, and I remember her telling my mom she was really afraid of needles. And I went, And, I'd had my shots. I'd been around the world. Not really around the world. I'd been to Rapid, and I'd had shots. And, I was in school. I had my, I'd done the deal. And I remember hearing Jo say that she was really afraid of needles. And I went, I didn't even know there was, they're not pleasant, and I don't like them or anything, but afraid, that was a big word. There was a reason to be afraid of needles that I didn't know about. Thank heavens I had been eavesdropping, which incidentally, when you're eavesdropping, there is a lot of emotions involved. Am I right? When you're busy listening to stuff that you really shouldn't be listening to, all of your senses are alive and they're open. Right? Because you might get caught. Somebody might catch you doing something you're not supposed to do. Oh my goodness. You have to be on alert because you might be caught. This is dangerous, and I am not kidding. It is dangerous because what you overhear when you're eavesdropping gets planted in your heart. And it gets planted in your heart the way you have come to believe it. So back to my whole needles fear illustration. I was about 7, something like that, because I know that because I was reasoning with myself. There's nothing, fear, afraid of needles, that's not that big of a deal. They hurt and I don't like them. And, you always kind of whine and cry about it and ask Mom, how come I have to have a shot? And I remember asking that. And I also remember arguing with myself when I heard what Joanne had said. She was afraid of them. But I thought, well, I don't really understand it, but there might be a reason. So I'm going to just hang on to that. So fast forward to about 3 months before I turned 12, June of 1972. And I was supposed to have a shot. And I believe my mom, if I brought her up here right now, she would tell a story. I think you would remember it, right? No? Maybe not. It was right after the flood, 1972 flood, and I was supposed to have a shot. And Mom took me down there to the place to have my shot, and I refused to take off my coat, wearing a coat in June, because I was not going to have a shot. And I came unglued, and I won. Maybe I didn't. I don't remember. No, I didn't. I didn't win, because I remember it hurt, and I learned something to be afraid of for shots. The point I'm trying to make is, as a child, I had experience with shots, didn't like them, not that big of a deal, but fear, not really the issue. Many years later, 5 years later, in fact, that thing had grown and produced a harvest. And have you ever done that? You ever, get an opportunity to do something, a challenge, or something that you're not really, and you go, wow, I didn't even know that was in me. Where did that come from? I can't believe I did that. Well, take a look back and find out. Just look. Was there a time in your life then you had a little bit of information and you let it enter your heart? And then, it hangs out there and it grows and turns into something that maybe you're not really excited about. So we do that with the Word of God. That's my point with that story. And we do that not on purpose, but we are Westerners. Not only are we Westerners, we're Gentiles, which means we're not raised in the Hebrew tradition. We are raised in the Roman Western tradition. We really, really like 1 + 1 = 2. We really like, just tell me what to do so I can do it. I don't really want to think about it. I don't want to really have to figure things out. Hebrew people really love the process. It's part of the process. It's not the end justifies the means. It's the process is the means. We don't think like that. So when we approach the Word of God, we're looking for answers. Just, give it to me straight. I don't really. Just tell me what to do. Tell me what to think. Tell me what to say. And then I'll probably decide not to do it or whatever. But that's what we like. And so when we're reading the Word of God that is written to a mindset that is different than our own, we are like me, eavesdropping on a conversation that I really don't quite understand from my perspective and from my huge bank of knowledge that I bring to the table. Right? Am I making sense so far? Okay. And one of the places where this is really apparent to me is the book of Revelation. And that's, hopefully, in the next few minutes, we're going to go through the first few books of Revelation from a different perspective. One that isn't over here, pre-covenant, which is frankly, for the most part, I just wrote this down so I'll read it, if I can find it. As Westerners, we are eavesdropping in a way, meaning we hear things and we process them through our body of knowledge until our minds are satisfied with a conclusion that can somehow make sense to it. This, in my mind, I have a picture of this, and it's Wyatt putting his puzzles together. We're working on puzzles, and if it sort of looks like it might fit, there, made it fit. Good deal. That's swell. The picture's really off. Doesn't really work at all. But doggone it, you made that thing fit, right? Come on. Do we not have our view of God and a lot of the words that we read right there in black and white, are they not just sometimes a little, okay, I guess I'll make that fit. Don't really like the picture that it produces, though. Right? Am I alone in this? Okay, good. All right. So we get it satisfied. You know, I didn't understand when the minister said, Lord, receive our offering. In my mind, you process it. You look at somebody when you're talking to them. So the somebody must be hiding behind, curtain number 1. And for my little 5-year-old mind, that makes sense. Okay, God has to be behind the curtain. There must be a reason why needles are to be feared. So, okay, that's true. Settle it, done. Don't have to look at that again. I got that all figured out. Really. So we satisfy ourselves with a conclusion. We have to. It's the way we're made. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way we're made. You ever working on a problem or something? It's and it just goes over and over and over in your mind, and you can't sleep, and you got to figure it out, and you're making pictures, and okay, if I do this, and you just exhaust yourself trying to come up with a conclusion that your mind can finally go, okay, that'll work. That makes sense to me. Am I right? And then you can go, okay, good night. Sometimes we struggle with those things our whole life. The Word of God, in some cases, is like that. And the reason it's a difficult thing to make it, to come to a satisfying conclusion is we're trying to force a conversation from a God that we haven't fully come to know or be in relationship. Because you can only know Him when you've had a relationship with Him. You spend time with Him. You enjoy being with Him in His presence. And, like I said the other day, you come to know His glory, which means you come to know things from His perspective. You leave the old way, the old covenant, the old way of looking at things, and you come over to His side, and you look at things from His perspective. And that's the glory of God, is the view and the opinion and the reality that's true. So, anyway, we're trying to eavesdrop on something and trying to make it fit. And it's not very comfortable. Hasn't been very comfortable for the most part. There's every possibility that if you have ever heard or read or studied the document that is called the Revelation of Jesus Christ, it's A, from a Western mindset. A, 1. B, it's from an old covenant, non-repentant mindset, which means you come at it from a mindset of the law of sin and death, which means that sin must be punished and the payment must be made in the body of the sinner or the guilty one. And C, old covenant thinking in the teacher's mindset and also in yours. And that makes a really ugly pot of soup, does it not? People are all mixed up, the blind leading the blind, and you got a big mess. And the result is a confusion, a confused mess. Uncertainty, fear, and terror. Not happiness. In Revelation, chapter 1, says, this is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave Him to show His servants, things which must shortly take place. So who gave what to whom and why? We have it right there at the very beginning. God, the Father, gave this revelation to Jesus Christ for the purpose of showing to His servants things which must shortly come to pass. Servants are people who wish to serve Him and to declare His victory and to proclaim His story or His testimony and to build His kingdom. This is written for the people who desire to serve Him in that way. So, if that fits you, then this is written for you to understand. It says He sent and signified it by His angel to His servant John, who bore witness to the word of God and to the testimony of Jesus Christ, to all the things that he saw. interesting, that means that John, he sent this to John because John not only saw it, but he was willing to corroborate his story. Does that sound kind of interesting? He is willing to put his life on the line and say, yeah, that's exactly what I saw. That's exactly what happened. I am signing my name as a witness to that. Verse 3, which is where we're at, it says, blessed, or blessed, is he who reads and those who hear the words of this prophecy and to keep those things which are written in it, for the time is near. And that word blessed, I looked it up. It means happy. So how many times have you read or been taught the things out of Revelation and you were happy? Anybody? 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 I've never been happy reading the book of Revelation. In fact, when I threw it out there 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I said, okay, should we study Revelation? Maybe, I don't know how long it's been. It's been a long time ago. Should we just kind of study that? Because I really don't want to. Please say no. And my class said yes. Oh, great. This is not happiness. This makes me miserable. This is fearful and terrifying to me. I hate what it says, frankly. I don't like any of it. That's my old thinking that I brought. And then I read this. 3 little bitty verses into the whole thing, and it says, if you read this, not only for the person who reads it, but for the person that hears it, they're going to be happy. And I went, I think I have a problem here. I'm thinking that God is behind the purple curtain. I need to readjust the perspective. I need to grow up. I need to figure out what's going on here. And that's what we've been doing. The definition of prophecy. It means to discern. Declaring the purposes of God, whether by reproving and admonishing the wicked, or comforting the afflicted, or revealing things hidden. This is the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's not the revelation of the end of the world. I've heard that said, and I'm sure you've probably heard it said too. Because the people that often teach it say, this is a revelation of Jesus Christ. This is not the revelation of the end of the world. And then they go on and tell you about the end of the world. What? So I decided I was going to approach this from a different perspective that said, can I find the glory of God in these verses? Can I see this from his perspective, from a different perspective? Because the result, if A plus B equals C, and my C was fear, terror, horror, scared to death, get me out of here before this happens, I wasn't getting the right conclusion. My formula was off. So to find him in the place his glory dwells. You've heard me say this before. I love my quest in life is to find the place that the glory of God dwells in my heart and in your heart. Can I find the glory of God? Can I see his glory in you? Can I let his glory shine through me? And can I find his glory, his perspective in here? Because if you find his glory and you find his perspective, there's something that comes along with it. Happiness, love, joy, peace. You find him. You don't find fear. You don't find hopelessness. You don't find terror. You don't find scared to death if you're in him. So that was our goal. Another thing I want to throw out here, when you're building a doctrine, which is your beliefs about God and what you're going to build your life on, do not sacrifice the clearly known and the clearly declared on the altar of the vague and the obscure. What that simply means is, what do you know? Build it on that. I know that Jesus loves me. How do I know that? because he died for me. He sacrificed his life. He rose from the dead. Had lots of witnesses to prove it. That needs to be enough. And on top of that, can I build a doctrine? Can I build my life? Can I come up with an idea or a theory? Can I read it in there? Do I have to throw away Jesus loves me, he died, buried, rose from the dead, redeemed me from my sin? Can I build a doctrine on that? Or do I have to maybe he sort of died for me a little bit. Maybe he kind of only redeemed half of me to make it fit. Do I have to do that? If I have to do that, you better throw it away. Or at least put it on the back shelf and say to yourself, it's okay. I don't get it. I don't know it. Makes no sense to me. Maybe I will never pick that up again. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I will only allow it in my heart and in my life when I can make it fit clearly with what I know to be true. And like I said, for me, my truth, what I try to build everything on is Jesus loves me. This I know. Because the Bible tells me so. That's it. Because otherwise, what you have is, you ever read Dr. Seuss? All the Who's down in Whoville? You know how they have, they're built upside down? You know, their mountains are little on the bottom and they're big on the top. If you try to build a doctrine or a theology or a belief on some little tiny obscure verse that you don't even know what it means, you got things upside down and backwards and there's no foundation in it. So if you need to blow up your thinking, go ahead and do it. Probably a good thing. How it settles down, get to something that's true. So for the most part, Revelation has been taught to me at least the way I had come to understand it, was upside down and backwards. And it didn't make me happy. Other thing that's interesting about this document, written by John, the apostle, he wrote 4 other books in the Bible. He wrote the Gospel of John and the 3 letters, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John. And not a single other place does he ever sign his name. He calls himself the other apostle. He calls himself, the disciple that Jesus loved. He refers to himself in the 3rd person. He never signs his name. In this document, he signs his name over and over. So, did he all of a sudden get, full of himself? This is me. I'm saying this. Probably not. I think there's a reason for it. And I think it's because God's purpose in the document that is the revelation of Jesus Christ is that it's a legal document. It's different than maybe the other things that we have. A legal document in the verses that he uses here, it says, grace, I missed a page. For the time is near. 3, verse 4, John. He signs his name. And then it says, to the 7 churches that are in Asia, grace to you and peace from him who is and who was and who is to come, and from the 7 spirits who are before his throne, and from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the rulers over the kings of the earth, to him who loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood, and has made us kings and priests to the God and to his God and Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. So be it. Let's settle that. Behold, he is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, and even those who pierced him. And all the tribes of the earth will mourn because of him. Even so, amen. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, says the Lord, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. John. 5 times in this document, 3 in the very first chapter, and 1 in each of the last 2 chapters of Revelation, signs his name. You ever bought a house? You ever done that? You better, work out, because you are signing your name a lot. Legal documents demand it. There is, in the language of this first chapter, I call it legalese, there are words that are used strictly for legal documents. The word show means to give evidence or proof. Bore witness means to be a witness, to bear witness, to affirm that one has seen or heard or experienced something, corroborates another's testimony. And then, of course, testimony is one that testifies before a judge, and then his signature. Legal documents, they declare a purpose, they identify the originator, they identify the recipient. All you have to do is think about a check right now. They indicate a date and a location, and they have signatures of the responsible party, and they have signatures of a witness. That's exactly what this is. This is for the purpose of establishing a legal document. I, John, both your brother and companion in the tribulation and kingdom and the patience of Jesus Christ, was on the island of Patmos for the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. He is establishing who he is. I am John. I am your brother. I am this person. Let me make it very clear who I am and where I am at. Right now, I'm on the island of Patmos. When somebody gets married, you have to say, got married here. Or, these people, they got married here, Meade County, South Dakota. That's the way it is. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice, as of a trumpet, saying, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. And what you see, write in a book and send it to the 7 churches which are in Asia, to Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. 7 churches. I want you to write this down, establish this document as a legal document, and I want you to send it out. So far, so good? Nothing to be afraid of yet, right? Okay. It says, then in verse 12, I turned to see the voice that spoke to me. And having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. What does that mean? In the Hebrew mindset, it means everything. In the Western mindset, it means absolutely, really nothing. He turned and he saw lampstands, 7 of them. Not just one lampstand with 7 thingies on it. He saw 7 lampstands. What does that mean? I'll tell you what I think it means. It's a structure that contains oil that will burn. Is that amazing or what? You are a structure that the Spirit of God is in you. The oil of God, the Spirit of God is in you. It's supposed to burn. The purpose of the church is to be a structure that the Spirit of God is resident in, and it's a light to the world. That's what we're for. That's what we're created for. That's what this place is for. That's what God's church is all about. Okay, and in the midst of the 7 lampstands, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the feet and girded about the chest with a golden band. His head and his hair were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Okay, follow me on this. You see the cross? Can you see everybody see the cross in there? Do you know what this is? This is a picture of the temple sacrifice. Inside the temple, in the tabernacle that God had commissioned Moses to build when they came out of Egypt, he said, okay, I want to have a relationship with you. It has to be a picture of what it really looks like. I'll just spend a little bit of time on here, because all I have is a little bit of time. Right here is called the brazen altar. It is the place that sacrifice was made. The animals were killed after their blood was poured out. The sacrifices were made here. And this was an outer court. You would go through. This is the place where the priests would wash their hands in that little sink thing. This, if you can imagine, this is outside. Everybody could see this part here. You would bring your sin and your sacrifice. The priest would take care of it for you. He would he would take the blood. He'd wash his hands, and then there was a need to go into a door. There was a door that separated that bronze laver, into this inner place. And then, that separated, see that altar of incense? There was a veil that separated the altar of incense and the lampstand and the table from the very, very inner place, the holiest of all, where the Ark of the Covenant was, which is called the mercy seat of God. Picture clear so far? What John said is, when I turned, Jewish guy, right? He's a Jewish guy, Hebrew. I turned and I saw. I changed my perspective. And I saw something I hadn't seen before. And what I saw was the Son of God. And his feet were on fire, like burnished bronze. When you read in the Word, a brazen, bronze, brass always means, it's referring to this. Sacrifice, judgment, payment, yucky. He turned and he saw the Son of God. His feet were on fire, looked like they were on fire. And then he goes on to describe, he is seeing this. This is, if you put Jesus on this cross, face up, he has in his right hand, what? Yeah. And on his left hand, he's got the elements of the covenant. Where his chest was, his heart is the prayers of the saints. And where's his head? In the picture that we have, where would Jesus' head be? The Ark of the Covenant. The mercy seat of God. God says, if you want to see me, if you want to know me, you won't find me in the law. You won't find me in the words of black and white. You will find me at the mercy seat. And in order to get there, you're going to have to deal with your sin. You're going to have to, blood is going to have to be shed. You're going to have to see if that was an adequate sacrifice. You're going to have to go into judgment. Like, was my sacrifice enough? What Jody talked about this morning. Was my sacrifice enough? Do I have to work harder? What do I have to do? You're going to go into judgment. And the whole goal for every person who desires God is that mercy seat. I want to be in the presence of God. Better is one day in his presence than 1,000 years anywhere else. The goal is the presence of God. This whole thing, this whole world that we live in, it's been around for, the human beings have been around here struggling to get back into the presence of God since the fall of man. Right? That's the goal. That's where your life is. That's where your light is. That's where truth is. That's the goal. We couldn't get there. He turned and he saw the Son of Man and how Jesus fulfilled all of this. This is the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's not the revelation of the end of the world. Well, kind of. It's the revelation of the end of the world's system in our life. How about that? Can you make that one fit nice and easy? It's not like this whole place it's not about the place blowing up and us going into hell or heaven. It's about how did Jesus fulfill all that was necessary to end what Satan had established. He is the prince of this world. So maybe it is about the end of the world. The way Satan had it. Okay, is that cool? In his right hand is these 7 stars. Okay, kind of cool. And out of his mouth went a sharp, 2-edged sword, and his countenance was like the sun, shining in its strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. But he laid his hand on me, saying to me, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am he who lives and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore." Amen. Here it is again. Amen. Amen. So be it. That's what amen means. Establish it. I have the keys of Hades and of death. Write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which will take place after this. This is an exciting book. And the more I read it, frankly, the happier I get. The less terrified I am. I am not scared. I am not scared of what is in the end of the book. And I don't mean that like silly. I've read the end of the book and we win. It's going to be hell before we get there. But, we win in the end. And, that doesn't do anything for me. I don't know if it does anything for you. It does nothing for me. The way it's sort of like been handled. No. This is amazing stuff. Okay, the mystery of the 7 stars, we're in verse 20, which you saw in my right hand, the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands which you saw, they are the 7 churches. That word angels means messenger. So if we want to try to spiritualize this, and it's an angel, some being, which I'm not making fun of angels at all. I'm grateful for them, and they are here. And but this is to the messengers, the people who have the message for those churches. They have something that they need to know. They are struggling with something, and there's something that they need to know, about which I want them to be happy. Is that a little different from maybe how you've ever heard it before, if you've ever heard it before? He has them. If you imagine that cross thing again, and just in the strength of this, is in his right hand. Your life is in his right hand, and it's based on the covenant that's in his left hand. You don't have to work. He's done it. Is that cool? You don't have to struggle. You don't have to wonder about your sin, and you don't have to wonder about if you were good enough, and if your blood is good enough, and if you've lived good enough. If you're doing that, it's futile. You can't do it. He did it. And the strength of your life is in his hands. So anyway, the Revelation chapter 2 and 3, the churches they're addressed, they're assessed. I think I read that wrong, spelled that wrong. Exhorted, encouraged, empowered. There's 7 churches, and I don't know if you can, you can see the stars, but right here is Jerusalem, right here is Israel. Right here, that's the island of Patmos. That was the place from which this document was written. He was a prisoner there. And he had, where those stars are, that is modern-day Turkey. Right, in that time it's called Asia Minor, but that's modern-day Turkey. There had been 9 churches there until 60 A.D., when there was a huge earthquake, and it wiped out Laodicea, Church of Colossae, and Hierapolis. Laodicea was the only church that rebuilt itself. So at this time, there were 7 churches that were John's love. And a little bit about those churches. Okay, Ephesus, it was a moving and shaking kind of church. It had stuff going on. They were doing lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff. They were the happening place. But they lost themselves in the busyness of what they were doing. And they lost their love in the process. And the holder of the church, and what Jesus revealed to them, what they needed to know, is he was the one that held them. He introduced himself to that church as, I'm the one that holds you. It's me. It's not your works. It's not your moving and shaking and doing and knowing and doing everything right. I hold you, not your works. The way, in church, to the church of Smyrna, who he introduced himself to be to them, what they needed. He introduces himself to you because you need him in a way that only you need him. Smyrna, it says he was the conqueror of death and he was the giver of life. They needed to know that because they were facing some serious stuff. They needed to know. Pergamos, to them, he said, I am the word of truth. You kind of like got things mixed up a little bit. You need to know the word of truth. I'm your guy. Come know me. Thyatira, the one, he introduced himself to them as the one who sees all because he was holy. The once and for all sacrifice. He is the only one qualified to judge all. Interesting thing, is a little side note about Thyatira. There's a little thing in there it says about Jezebel. And he says, you let this woman who calls herself a prophetess, Jezebel, to remain and teach there. I don't dig that. Not happy with that. And a little bit of study about Jezebel. Oh, remember, these are Jewish people living in a Roman conquered area. So the people that are reading this have a Jewish history, Hebrew history, but they're surrounded. And also, I believe the people that were there weren't just Hebrew people, because Jesus was the happening thing all around, and people were turning to him left and right. So not only were there Hebrew people there were Roman people there. There were people with Greek influence there who had, had the place before Romans showed up and wiped everything out. And what do we know about Greek and Roman? The numerals are kind of yucky. Like X, 1, what does that mean? No, what we kind of learn about Greek and, Alexander the Great, and we know about Greek mythology and their weird gods and Roman gods, like weird stuff. So they were in a culture that was surrounded by this body of Greek mythology that kind of morphed into Roman god worship thing, and they are in the middle of all that. Well, what's interesting about Jezebel is there was one of the most powerful people in Greek, in the times of the Greek and Roman, one of the most powerful spiritual people was somebody called the Sibyl. And she was a prophetess who didn't serve God. She'd been around for that office of prophetess had been around for about 400 or 500 years before. And what this person did was, go into a trance and then come up with a plan and then tell the plan. She was a prophetess. Well, it's my speculation that what he was talking about is, you know what? You are a church of the living God, bought and paid for by the blood of Jesus. Why do you still play around with this whole seer Jezebel prophetess thing? Drop it like a hot rock. Ain't true. It's messing with truth. So anyway, that's a whole other story. That was a commercial. Let's see. Sardis, how he introduced himself to there is the one perfected in the Spirit, the one who has and commissions his messengers with the message. Philadelphia, he revealed himself as the one holy and true who has authority in this world and empowers his church. Laodicea, he is the creator, the originator, the completer, and the one who knows how this thing works. He is faithful, and he alone is qualified to declare truth because he is truth. Those are the things that those particular churches were struggling with. A lot of the things that we, as individuals and churches, tend to struggle with today. So, let's see. Historical, cultural, spiritual mixed concepts that defiled truth.